Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is the City of Aspen City Council work session for December 4th, 2023. On our agenda tonight is one item, the development of the Aspen Public Art Plan. Sarah, I guess you'll be introducing this.
I will be introducing you. Just one second, Bon. I'm getting that echo. Can you help me with that really quick?
I just turned it off.
I did have.
Try it again.
Is that better? Okay. No, it's still kind of doing it.
I just muted it.
Is it just her?
It might, my computer is the computer.
I do. Now batting.
No, it's giving us feedback because you're.
Because I'm off, right? Unless it's
Seventh
is
inning
it the
stretch.
mic?
Do we have any speaker on Zoom today?
Sorry?
Are we gonna have a guest speaker on Zoom?
No.
No, I think every
We're
presenters
all
are in
here.
the room.
Yeah, we're all here.
Okay, I don't know how to shut it off. It's not working. Because you're muted.
Sorry?
No,
Check.
we're still getting it.
All the way down to
I can't control it. It's not working.
So weird. Well, shoot, what's our plan B? How can I present this slide?
Does anyone else have this?
Kendall, we can use
Yeah, do you wanna
hers.
use hers?
Yeah,
You want to use mine? And
okay.
then,
Now,
oh, do I,
hers
is projecting. Yeah, but you want me to just do the slides and then
You were climbing something?
use this to speak?
Picador Zaba,
oh, yeah, could we do, well, no, because they have to go on
It's
to,
good?
Oh, yeah.
she's got the presentation.
Successful trip, that's the best way to say
Yeah.
it. That's the best way to say it.
I didn't die, some of it, like, yeah, it was very tiring. We started at 12:30 in
Oh,
the
shoot,
morning.
we were all through the tech.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And then another 5 hours to get back down or whatever it was?
Only 3 hours
Is
later.
it that guy? Or is it this guy, maybe?
Honestly, I'm always rooting for a zip line or like a hang glider. There's nothing worse than
If you try it now that you're unplugged.
coming down the glacier was kind of fun.
I don't hear an echo now.
You don't? Okay, hold on. Well, I still do. All right, so I'm going to send you the Zoom.
Oh,
Okay, hold on. You got to log in.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible.
I don't know that I'm logged on to the internet here. I just was doing it for my own.
Whitney's 14.5. In North America, we're having Denali and Mount Logan are the only two higher peaks in North America. I would never do that.
Dang. I told you, now my face all over. I'm like, oh.
Sorry, I just closed out of all my things, so I just thought I was gonna be.
This is like.
Did you send it to my email?
I'll let you know. Yeah.
Sorry,
I did, yep. There it is. All right, so then at this point, I probably just should log off, so I'm not getting that
Meeting.
echo. Well, I'm glad I sent you guys.
Well, it's.
I'm going to stop sharing.
I think it used to be just like years ago. They had like an old
I am going to leave the meeting.
Oh, good, okay. Yeah, did
We'll leave the
you do the whole
webinar.
meeting?
Coming back in.
Was it robust? It was a lot of stuff, right?
Well, she's,
It is your laptop though, because now it's not.
hello, yeah. That is so weird. I don't know what to,
So we asked them to send us the deck, so we set up a 3-hour meeting for
on,
December 11th, I think, to kind of unpack all of it.
We're following up December 11th?
back out to this.
Oh, no, they were treating.
I mean, 'cause that-
I had the same experience in New Zealand with those glaciers, because you'd actually drive up this road, and next to the road was all these signs that said like what year it was at that point.
So another housing task force on the 11th?
Yeah.
1 o'clock?
I think that's what it is. I haven't seen the
Okay.
email on it yet, but
That's surprising.
My solution, I like the future.
Wonder why they need to get to it so fast.
A little further away from the sun.
okay.
I think technology will get there. Try to figure out where it's at.
then there's one for January. That's the day that I'm posting.
It's strong, and that's gonna be.
You know what? I know. You know what? I might actually pull it up too, just so I can.
There we go.
Still get an echo here.
Are you getting an
It's
echo?
because I'm
Yeah,
doing this too at the same time.
we should chat for a second, either tonight or tomorrow, about my email that we saw from.
Hello, hello. Maybe that's better now. All right.
Are we good?
Talk to Betsy
I think we're good now.
and see,
All right.
bringing some people up.
It's exciting.
That was exciting.
People.
And is this full screen? We make it, see if you can make it full screen, right? Hit that.
For the show.
Yeah. You and your speech and Dave and
All right, I think we are ready now. So sorry about that technical difficulties. I think we're good to go. Did it go into the full screen mode, hopefully? Well,
Sounds right so far.
okay, let's see if we can,
That's all about, but Control L. I have an Mac.
because it's showing full screen on her mode. It's like it's not on. Can we get you one more time? So sorry. It seems like it's frozen on the screen that you're seeing, because see, we can move the mouse around here and,
I like my Mac better than my other computers. The battery lasts longer. Some things that drive me nuts on it, but some things drive me nuts about this one, right?
yep. Okay, and then let's go. All right. We're good. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm Sarah Roy, Executive Director of the Red Brick Center for the Arts, and I'm here with Kendall Peterson of They Are Squared and Jill Stillwell of Stillwell Cultural Consulting. I also want to recognize members of our Public Art Visioning Committee who are here with us in the audience this evening. We are so pleased to be able to be here tonight to share with you all the work that's been happening towards creating a public art plan for Aspen. From May to October, we hosted a very robust community engagement effort. I have to say, personally, it was incredibly rewarding and enjoyable to be out in the community, talking with people, hearing about their ideas for public art, hearing about their favorite piece of public art. I heard a lot of stories about the art that currently exists here in Aspen. I think some of those stories tended more towards folklore at times, but again, incredibly rewarding experience. The main sentiment or takeaway is that people are enthusiastic and they're passionate about the arts and culture here, but they're also enthusiastic and passionate about our community and how much they love Aspen. This work to create a public art plan started back in 2020 when members of council and staff were hearing from community members that they wanted more art experiences out in our public spaces. We do not have a formal public art plan or a program, therefore we don't have the dedicated resources or kind of known processes to go about to realize these projects. Additionally, at this time, we don't have allocated resources or a management plan in place to even take care of the current pieces that the city owns. Pandemic threw a little bit of a damper in our efforts, so fast forward to 2022, and the Red Brick asked council during the 23 budget process for funding to be able to hire consultants. We knew we needed consultants to help us with two things. One, to run that kind of, or help us with that robust community engagement effort that we wanted to take on. And two, we needed the expertise in the technical knowledge to help us write that plan. Public art plans are not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. Instead, communities really craft them to the needs specific to the community and that vision. We issued an RFP. We got 5 very highly competitive bids, and I'm super fortunate and lucky again to be sitting here with Jill and Kendall. They bring tremendous amount of experience in public art program management. Kendall was the public art manager for the city and county of Denver, as well as for the hotel and transit center at the Denver International Airport. Jill, among the many hats that she wore for the city of Fort Collins, oversaw their public art program. And they both have extensive experience and knowledge, again, in the kind of technical policy writing that you typically see in a public art plan. Tonight, I'm going to start us off by sharing with you kind of a quick, broad definition of what is public art. So what's unique about public art is that it's out in our public spaces. Therefore, it's free and accessible for all to enjoy. Public art creates those kind of memorable places and experiences. So think of our own dancing fountain. I always like to use this as my example. Designed by Nick DeWolf and Travis Fulton. Nick, one of the artists, Nick, is here playing his violin in front of the dancing fountain. But you think about that piece and how you have kids and adults and families kind of gathering around with it, interacting with people they know, interacting with people they don't know, and how that piece has really kind of transformed the corner where it sits into this really active, lively hub. Public art can take on various forms. So it can be a mural, like the Shepherd Ferry mural here, depicted here. This is located in Aspen. You can have kind of a traditional figurative sculpture, like the one shown here in the top left corner. You can have a performance is considered a form of public art. So Santa Fe Ballet did a production of Bloom in the summer of 2022 in Wagner Park, and that's kind of a form of public art. Earthworks is another kind of form that public art can take on. So if you think of Herbert Byer's piece, it's called Earth Mounds. It's located in Anderson Park, which is back on the Aspen Institute. That is another form that public art can take. Public art can be temporary, like a performance. It can be momentary. You can have an art installation that's up for a few weeks, a few months, a year, or a city can decide to invest in kind of permanent pieces that then becomes an asset of the city. Public art's unique in that it can express the character or personality of a town, and it also creates those opportunities for the arts and culture as well as artists. So for tonight's presentation, we have a couple of different topics that we're going to go over. The information is going to kind of build on itself as we go through the evening. I'm going to turn it over here in just a second to Kendall and Jill, and they're going to share with you guys highlights from the community engagement effort as well as other work that they have been doing. From that, they're going to share with you the key findings. So that's kind of, again, what came out of the community engagement has kind of gotten distilled down. We'll take a pause for any clarifying questions that you guys might have at that time. And then I'm going to take the mic back over, and I'm going to go over the draft of the public art plan framework with the help of Kendall and Jill. And then we're going to move into kind of a proposed phased approach that we are recommending. And then we're going to open it up for council's discussion this evening.
Next slide.
Do you have an estimate of what your presentation time is?
I'd say it's about 35 to 40 minutes for all of us, and we're a couple minutes into it, so maybe 30 minutes at this point. Just to get you guys thinking, these are the kind of topics of discussion that we'll be having. We're going to be looking for feedback on the key findings and the draft of the mission and guiding principles that we've come up with. Again, this has all been informed from the community engagement effort that we just took on. We're going to go over a draft of the project selection and development process that we've outlined. And then we have two specific questions. Is council supportive of a phased approach? And is council okay with us coming back and moving forward with kind of a formal budget request to, again, implement this plan or initiate this plan and the program? So without further ado, unless you have any other thoughts or questions, I'm going to turn it over to Kendall and Jill.
Thank you so much, Mayor and council members, everybody, and members of the VC and everyone. Thanks for inviting us up here. We traveled very, very grim roads to get here to present to you, so I'm really excited to be here. Again, my name is Kendall Peterson. I am, as Sarah mentioned, I've been doing public art for over 15 years, and I think one thing that is really important to remember about both Jill and I is that we both have worked in municipalities doing public art, so we know how hard it is to get these programs started and keep them running, and so we know all the ins and outs, as from consultants all the way down to being in the actual grit of the city. So, but just giving you a little tour of what we did when we came in, I'm going to tell Jill to take over from here.
Sure. Thank you so much for having us tonight. I'm Jill Stillwell. And so as Sarah said, we've been working on this project for quite some time, for about 7 or 8 months, and we started really looking at the community and doing some baseline research. We did a tour of Aspen several times and looked at all of your existing public art and assessed that artwork, and that's part of our final report. We'll be telling you about what that art is, what kind of condition it is, and we GIS located it all so it can be mapped. We also created branding around this public plan process to really help people identify when we were out in the community. We've got stickers on on computers and that sort of thing, and these are some of the logo that we created for the process, and then created a lot of really fun materials that went out into the community, like this coloring book and branded coloring pencils, as well as grocery sacks and things like that, really trying to help people identify that we were here and that we were talking about public art. Then we also embarked on a community survey via the Aspen Community Voice, and we had 208 surveys completed, and we did offer that in English and Spanish and had it online and on paper to take out to different events. Really our goals for the community engagement effort, which is what we're gonna, next few slides are gonna focus on, that robust effort that we undertook, was really trying to reach as many community members as we could. And really trying to gather their input and their feedback and understand what their values would be around a public art program. How would it be meaningful for them? So we wanted to get their input. We wanted to share with them more about what public art is. Some people recognize it, other people weren't so sure, so we did a lot of testing and education around that. And then we also wanted to make sure we met people where they are in the community. And Sarah did a great job at showing up at farmers markets and different community events and going out to your civic groups. And then we also held 3 major public engagement events as well. And these are just a couple of pictures from those public engagements we did. We participated with the pavement art demonstration project in front of the Wheeler Opera House back in June. We hosted an event, open house style event at the Pitkin County Library in August, and then we held a community conversation at the Aspen Art Museum, and these pictures are all from those different events that we hosted.
Let me ask council members, did you guys interact with any of these outreach opportunities over the last year?
No.
You did not?
I don't think so.
I attended the Wheeler Opera House one.
Awesome.
I did as well.
I recognized you.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I'll let Kendall share kind of our summary of our engagement efforts.
Yeah, so we were able to engage with more than 820 people in a variety of different methods, and I want to give a huge shout out to Sarah. Sarah is, we've worked with a lot of different clients, and she has been such a dream because she actually took what we had and ran with it. So if you saw her out at different community meetings, and that was one of the ways that we were able to extend our reach out into the community. So we did the pavement art mural, as you mentioned, the Wheeler. That was a huge success. We also worked with the Aspen Ideas Festival to host a free session on the role of art in the community. We also hosted community conversations at the Pitkin County Library and Aspen Art Museum, as you mentioned. And then we also convened several meetings with the visioning committees. Some of the committee members are here with great discussion. Sarah hosted pop-up booths at community events, and we also, you gave several presentations to local boards and civic groups, and then we also were able to do a lot of press. That was really incredible. So we got over 24 hits in the local press.
Will you take just a brief moment and define or explain what the visioning committee is?
Yes. So normally when we do any process like this, we pull together a group of people who are considered sort of I would say for the best, they're sort of the ambassadors for what we're doing. So they're the group of people who are stakeholders, who have sort of an interest in the project, but also people who can help guide our process the whole way through. So we meet with them several times during the process. And how many total did we have? 13. And so they're engaged with us. They help us sort of hone some of the messages we've heard. When we found our key findings, they gave us feedback on the key findings. And then just help us along the way, being ambassadors to the community, telling people about what we were doing. Anything else you want to add?
No, that's it. And it was 13 members of the visioning committee, and we met monthly over that time, starting in May.
Do you have any input from the visioning committee? I don't know if I saw it in here, but can you share like comments from the visioning committee or some of those discussions?
Well, what I would say is that the visioning committee reviewed all of our work, and we took their comments and revised it. So we're going to look at our key findings in just a moment, and we really worked with them to kind of give us a reality check, if you will, and make sure that it was reflective of the community. So it's really fed into what we're showing you tonight in every aspect of what we've looked at. They worked on the mission statement. We did that as a group at the visioning committee meeting, and then a small group of members worked with Sarah and kind of refined it, and then we brought it back to the visioning committee to have them look at it again, also with the key findings again. So, but we do have notes from all of those meetings that we've had, so we can definitely provide those.
I'd be interested, thanks.
Yeah, and the first meeting that we had with them was absolutely sort of a, just learning it from one of the most important things that we do is trying to get to know Aspen. So like Sarah said, we don't do cookie cutter plans, so we wanted to make sure that we understood the ins and outs of the Aspen community, what they want and what sort of value they place in this type of program. So that was really, it was a Q&A, a little bit of a SOAR workshop, a lot of sort of just discussion about public art in general for that very first meeting as well, which we learned a lot from. So there are just lots of layers.
And I'll kind of build on what Jill said. So the key findings, which we're just going to present kind of the main 5 points of the key finding, but in the memo, you'll find the kind of expanded version of the key findings where there's multiple bullet points under each point we're going to go over tonight. And those were absolutely informed by the visioning committee, and their kind of fingerprints and thoughts are all over those key findings. And the key findings are going to become the base for which informs the mission, the guiding principles, and then the process. So their voice is throughout this process. Additionally, in the memo, you're going to see kind of highlights from the survey. When the final kind of report gets written, we'll have kind of a more in-depth look at the survey. But again, what's been distilled out of the survey is represented in the key findings, the guiding principles, and the mission that you will all hear about tonight.
And, sorry, I don't mean to add to that. We also, it wasn't just the visioning committee, we also held 14 different one-on-one interviews, one with you, Meritori, and with all the different partners that are around Aspen that may potentially be partners for the public art program, and held 4 or 5 focus groups. So we were out in the community quite a bit. It might have seemed like we were a little quiet for a while, but we did quite a bit of one-on-one talks.
And then you can see that more than 820 people total interacted with elements of this process throughout.
Right. So key findings, like we say, there's a little bit more depth in the memos that Sarah's provided for you, but these are just the key, very high-level findings that we had. But one of the things that was most important to think of was that everyone would like the public art program to build community. So the idea is that it's not just artwork for certain people to look at, but it's for the whole community. And that is all the different layers of Aspen's community. So it's people who live here, people who might vacation here and are here for just a week. It's people who work here and people who are live here part-time and seasonal, that type of thing. So the public art program is for all those different groups. Also that it should be inclusive, that we want to make sure that all those groups are kind of included in that there's no one that's left out. So again, that idea that it is a collection or a group of happenings that will be available to everyone free of charge. And then what was really interesting to me as a person who's lived in Colorado, that arts and culture are a part of Aspen's DNA. When I found out that Aspen didn't have a public art program, I think I was really surprised, and a lot of people were very surprised. So the idea that this place where sort of arts and culture is just kind of, it just flows out of the community, it was interesting to think that we would have an opportunity to create a public art program from the ground up. And then also, in our discussions that Aspenites don't want anything that looks like what's been done outside of Aspen. They want it to be very unique, very innovative, and very fresh. You're not going to see public art that you've seen in other communities, so that was something that we heard over and over again, for sure. So those uniqueness, innovation, and really kind of trying to make sure that the artwork here will fit the community and its desire for excellence. So, any questions or
Yes, any
clarifications anyone needs at this point?
All right, then we're going to keep on cruising. So I'm going to present on a draft of the Public Art Plan Framework. So the plan's going to consist of two parts. You got your vision, and then you've got your policy. This, again, is something that each community needs to create specifically for themselves, again, to serve that vision and serve that community's needs. What we're about to present is directly informed from that community engagement, and we worked hard to kind of distill down and capture that into the intent of both of these. So here is a draft of the mission. Aspen Public Art creates community by connecting people to each other and to place through art experiences that build upon Aspen's legacy of innovation, creativity, and spirited independence. The guiding principles that were, again, distilled down from what we heard was create art experiences that engage and support community building and enhance human connection, to foster discovery, learning, and dialogue, and promote inclusive engagement, to celebrate creative expression and its contribution to enriching life experiences, to complement and respect the natural environment, to present artistic excellence in the most dynamic, innovative, unique projects possible, and to collaborate with arts and cultural organizations and other local serving organizations to support and amplify each other's mission. These are important because these become the foundation to the program, and they help guide the criteria that will be set up to decide which projects to move forward with. These are not fully done yet. We still need to do some more wordsmithing, and then we're also hoping tonight to get some kind of feedback on the vision and the direction in which these are kind of pointing us.
Yes.
Yep.
Any questions or comments on the, I think also, can I just add
Yeah.
one little thing? Just those visioning statements are also how you guide and say what things you don't want to do as well. I think it's the way you move forward with things, but it's also how you say if somebody comes to you and says, I want to put this thing, it's overwhelming to the environment, that kind of thing. So these are the visioning principles that will guide the program from here on out. So the words are very important.
All right, next I'm going to take us through the draft of the project selection and development process. So this process is grounded in a desire to have a public art program that allows for a variety of projects to occur and various ways for those projects to be realized. Therefore, we wanted to create a structure that allows for flexibility and is adaptable. Kendall and Jill shared that this is a totally unique approach and one that you haven't seen anywhere else, but again, they brought their expertise to kind of help guide us in what kind of works, and again, help guide us into what's going to fit the community. I'm going to run through this process kind of using a hypothetical project as an example. So our opportunity generators, so this is where, a project might get off the ground, yeah. So this is where kind of the inspiration for a project might come from, or the initiator of a project. So again, we're going to be looking to that mission and guiding principles, again, as that foundation and kind of touch point to, again, what do we want these projects to speak to? We'll be looking to council goals and saying, can we create projects that would serve one of your council goals? Partners and collaborators. So this is, again, one of the aspects that makes this so unique, is that our community recognizes that we have a tremendous amount of amazing arts and culture organizations here, as well as other local serving organizations, and to be able to work with them and collaborate with them and kind of use their expertise and get them involved in this is something really special to our community. We could look to the Public Art Advisory Committee. So this will be a advising or recommending committee that we're proposing that gets set up, but they could also be a source of, again, an idea for a project. We would also look at city projects. So if you have a park that's coming up for redevelopment, we could look there for an opportunity for a public art piece. And then lastly, the community. So you're going to hear the community theme throughout this, but the community, again, is something really important to us, and we want to get them involved, and again, helping us and envision what this can be. So for the example I'm going to use, the Public Art Advisory Committee comes up with an idea. They want to do an exhibition of artworks on our city mall, and they want the exhibition to be up for about 4 months. So that piece would move to the Public Art Advisory Committee, would make that recommendation and starts talking about it with city staff. We decide at that point to set up an optional workshop. So this is kind of an optional thing that you can, if a project deems it, we would set up. For that workshop, we would bring in other relevant city departments that kind of need to be part of the conversation. So community development or parks, to really help us kind of think through what are the opportunities on the mall and what are the constraints. From there, a project brief gets written, and this is where you outline the themes and the outcomes for the project, how it aligns with the mission, defining who the artist or curator is going to be. For this specific example, the Public Art Advisory Committee doesn't know who the artist is. They want to put it out for a call. It's called a call to artists, for artists to submit submissions. You start to outline expected costs, potential locations. Again, for the example I'm using, they've already identified that they want these works to go on the mall. We would start, again, talking about those installation requirements. So from the workshop, we kind of know what the constraints and opportunities are on the mall. And then community engagement. So community engagement, again, is something so important to this program that from the beginning, we want it start to be defined. So again, using this example, the Public Art Advisory Committee says they want the theme to be about the environment, or maybe our relationship to the environment. And they want the community engagement effort to be about education. So they want the artists, whoever that is going to be, to go into the schools and do some artist talks or host maybe a public community artist talk. So that would get defined early on. Then it would go to the Public Art Advisory Committee for their approval to recommend that the project moves forward. At that point, the Public Art Advisory Committee could decide to set up an optional public art work group. So again, this isn't for every project, but again, the example I'm using is kind of a big project, so they decide they want to set up this optional work group. And the reason that you do that is this work group serves as the selection committee. So they're the ones that are going to review the artist's proposals. And the reason you set up this work group is because you want to bring in different perspectives and expertise. So we've identified the theme as being about the environment. We've identified that education is going to be important to it. So you might want to bring in an environmental educator. You might want to bring in other educators. We've identified it's going to be on the mall. So we want to bring in a couple of representatives from businesses who are on the mall to, again, get their perspective on this. And again, they serve just a kind of one-time purpose, and that's to serve as that selection committee for this specific project. From that, the final kind of scope of work, and you can hit that, and project plan are written out. So that's kind of where you outline kind of the details, the agreement between the artist and or the partnering organization. You'd include information like timeline, milestones, the rights of the artist, payment schedules, and again, define those community engagement goals that we're going after.
Can I ask a quick question? The Public Art Advisory Committee, is there a lot of overlap with the Arts and Culture Grant Committee? Or not like overlap, but redundancy, or I'm just trying to understand the roles differently as far as having those two.
No, yeah, that's a great question. I don't think so, because I know they're kind of advising I mean, that's something to have a conversation, I guess, on, but I see this as, we want people to kind of help come up with ideas for public art programming. So we would want to include, not all, but include a couple artist voices on that committee. And I don't believe the grant steering committee right now has that perspective, you know, and I'm not quite sure what their, I mean, I know they're advising on how to allocate the funding, but again, this is kind of about specific to public art projects. So we do kind of want a little bit of expertise, I would say, in that realm on it. Not fully, but in that realm on it, so.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sarah, you mentioned that this process is very unique that you've outlined here.
Hi, I'm Siri. How can I help you?
So many ways Siri could help me. So you mentioned that the process that you've outlined here is very unique to Aspen and isn't or hasn't been done elsewhere. Could you point out sort of the specifics of what's unique about the process that you've outlined?
I mean, I'm happy to, I can take it, but maybe you guys, and maybe I'll take it and then I'll let them kind of back it up, because again, they just have more awareness of other public art program or plans in other communities. But again, that partner and collaborator role is again something very unique, and that's again because I feel like we have so many potential collaborators. So typically that's not something a program goes after. And typically you see a percent for art usually set up where you know, a city or a city project is up for redevelopment or being newly built, and they set aside a percent of that cost for public art that goes specifically on that piece of property, where we are more looking for public art to happen in many different places and not be generated out of a percent for art kind of tax or mechanism.
The other thing is the ability for, so the whole degree of how many people can generate projects is really novel to Aspen. But also the idea that this public art committee can, if it feels right and it fits all the aligned goals and everything like that, they could be the people who decide to move forward with the proper project vetting. Normally in a lot of public art programs, you have a specific committee for every single project. So you'd have like, if there's a park project, you have a specific project team for that, and they go through the selection process all together with that one. For another project, they would have another, so it's sort of a mix of that. It gives you the ability to have those different vetting groups if needed, but if you don't need it, then you don't have to use it. So it's kind of a little more streamlined. It doesn't look like it's streamlined here because it's there's a lot to go through, but it is a quite streamlined process.
And I think allowing for creativity up front as opposed to, you know, having a 1% program where the project is kind of defined by this, you know, capital improvement project and at that site. Whereas here we're saying, like, you guys have an opportunity to bring ideas from all different places in your community, and then before it gets fully vetted, you have this optional workshop opportunity where you can bring together the community again and city staff and kind of work through the idea. So it's not always coming from kind of a more rigid format of, you know, a capital improvement project, an artist selection type of a lane. So we feel like, as Kendall said, it gives you flexibility to move throughout this chart in different ways and have a lot of different types of projects, whereas other communities might just be a little bit more sculptural or object-based. So I think it's maximum flexibility is what we would say to bring what is unique about Aspen to the fore. That's what we're
Thanks.
And just
tried to do.
one quick addition to that another nuance is that it is scalable, right? We are incredibly small compared to some of these places, and yet the process can work whether we're talking about a one-off asphalt art project or in 15 years, council decides to have a $2 million arts fund and a giant committee, right? It is that kind of scalable, but the process is similar. Thanks.
Thanks. Using the example that you used, Sarah, how long would this process take?
You know, it will depend, project to project. What would you guess? I'm trying to sit here because this is,
The project that you did for the sort of demonstration project that you all did for
took
the.
5 months.
5
With our
months.
partnership with the Aspen Ideas Festival, which was kind of a pilot project, took 5 months. And so that was,
Did you use this into flowchart process?
we followed something very similar. We hadn't written this yet, but we actually did follow a similar process. And for that example, the Aspen Ideas Festival came to us. They're like a partner, a collaborator. The Aspen Ideas Festival staff, city staff got together. We kind of vetted it out, figured out what was going to be possible. We more or less identified all of the things on the project brief. We identified a theme. We knew it was the theme of that specific mural was going to be about community building. Since for that project, since they were the partner, the Aspen Ideas Festival was kind of, they selected the artist. They were kind of leading it, and we were kind of helping. So they selected the artist, but we both agreed, since it was about community building, it needed to be a local artist. So they identified Chris Erickson. They took on the majority of the costs for that, but city definitely supported it with city staff resources throughout this entire kind of development process and the implementation. And then we identified the community engagement elements. And then it didn't go to an advisory committee, but it did actually need to come to council. So you guys had to approve that exemption for the MUTCD. And then a SCOPA plan was written. So yes, it did follow a similar process.
Okay, and lastly, thank you. Lastly, I'll make an example up here to make sure that this is clear, but would this process provide an opportunity if the committee decided, okay, we've got this park project, we specifically want to commission, I'll use Anish Kapoor since you put up that artist there, but we specifically want to use that artist, and we would like to get a proposal specifically from that artist. We think for whatever reason, this is the type of sculpture we want in this particular park.
Yeah.
Does this process provide an opportunity to do that?
Yes.
Yes, you could. And I think that the main thing with public art is that it's that vetting phase. So it'll be something that will have to be a decision that's made by the Public Art Committee together. So it would be, they would have to all say, so is Anish Kapoor the best artist that we want for this? And they would probably be able to think about other artists if they wanted to invite other artists as well or whatever. So that would be where that decision would be made, so that at least then you say, when people ask you, well, why did you hire Anish Kapoor versus another artist, then you have that background of, that sort of vetting. That's the main thing about public art that's different than, say, curating at a museum. So it's really important when you're making artwork for the whole community that there is some sort of process.
Our procurement guidelines would need to come into play.
Yeah.
Whether or not we can single source an artist. Thanks.
Thanks.
But this process does allow you to do an invitational where you can invite 3 different artists to propose, and then it's discussed, so that you're giving opportunity to other artists as well as that artist to participate. And as Kendall said, it's really about it being a public process, being public art. So we want the art to be in the public, but we also want the process to be open and transparent, so people understand why you're spending money on these kinds of things, and that they've had a chance to witness or observe or see how those decisions were made.
Thanks.
I have a couple comments, but I'll allow Ward to go first if he'd like.
Yeah, just a question. This all looks like it's done administratively or through the different groups, subject to perhaps the council goals. It looks like maybe perhaps only way that the council would have to get involved if the project was decided to be, what do you call it, deaccession, to take it down? Is that?
No, it would have to be if the procurement code required council input, it would be needed there. I would tell you that from what I'm looking at on the screen, I think council would be called into this in probably every single phase because there would be a lot of, I think, concern about it moving forward appropriately. Does that answer your question? Is like, yes, council is in this process, council is limited in its role on purpose, but there will be times when council would be needed.
Yeah, I don't want to get involved in deciding what's art and what's not, but
It's a great point.
I don't also want, or I want to avoid
Yeah.
controversy
Surprises.
and divisive artwork.
Thanks. Well, I got a couple of comments because this is starting out already a little bit more process heavy than I think was intended when this came from the council table to embark on this journey. I am number one, the example that you're giving, I was not an intention from me, and I didn't really hear it necessarily from council members either. Not looking at city projects, like I didn't really envision us commissioning an artist and the like. You know, I really was anticipating this to be a couple of things. One, creating that map and that accessibility to some of the artwork that already exists in our community. And then number two, coordinating some of the efforts that we see going on, like the pavement painting project by the Wheeler, like the Shepherd Ferry mural that is on a building, like the construction site beautification that has happened. And then there's greater opportunities for some of the experiential type art projects that can bring the community together. And whether that is chalk in the street, or if that is something in a public park. Bloom from Aspen Santa Fe Ballet that was in the park recently. We've seen a lot of these kind of efforts for public art and community connection, and I was really looking at more of, yes, the Public Art Advisory Committee, because we need a community-based committee to be forwarding public art. But this process that is laid out in front of me just seems very city-centric, City of Aspen, organization-centric. The funding on this, again, wasn't really that kind of program that we were trying to initiate. I really look at this as the opportunity for coordination of public art. I am looking for a couple things as we go through the rest of the presentation. One, I would like to know a little bit more about what other communities have in place for their public art program and what that looks like. And how that relates to the budget that has been proposed here. Because generating a new full-time employee was not something that I even would have imagined at the outset of this. And then general administration fees that I see here, I'm wondering what those are for. So I guess what I'm interested in is perhaps a scaled down version of a little of what I'm seeing right now. I think there's a lot of community opportunity here. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I have more comments about some of the things that you put up in the guiding principles as that has effect on steering this going forward. But I just had to say that at this outset because right now what I'm seeing in front of me is a lot more.
We made it robust. We took it to kind of the big scale, to like what Diane said, to kind of accommodate the big vision piece, if that is the direction you guys want to go, or making it just kind of the smaller few months, 5 months, 6 months project to make that happen. Temporary public art was absolutely heard during that community engagement, and that is overwhelmingly what the community wants. They weren't looking for the big investment right now in the multi-million-dollar piece that's going to be become a city asset for here coming forward. So even in this selection process, which I totally recognize it's pretty robust right now, you know, but we needed to kind of go to that robust level to kind of think, all right, now how do we start to streamline that? And it does speak to those kind of collaborator projects, whether they're nonprofit collaborators or private sector collaborators. And when we identified city projects, again, it could be for a permanent piece or it could just be for a temporary piece. What we're gonna get into next, and I'll just finish this, is we are proposing a phased approach to kind of initiating this plan and getting the program going to allow us the time. We need to iron this out still. We still need to kind of figure out what makes sense for this community so that it doesn't get bogged down, you know, in process. But yet, as Kendall and Jill have spoken to, when you're dealing with public art and you're dealing with kind of public funding, we want to make a process that's kind of known and transparent and that we can bring community voice members into the process, whether they serve on the advisory committee or we need to set up a momentary public art work group so that they can serve as that selection committee, that we want to bring voices into this so that we don't land with the big surprise at the council table and everybody hates it, you know, so.
And if I could just say, this process, it looks, I recognize that it looks like it's really full of lots of city-heavy things, but this is in order to plan ahead for inevitable questions. So right now, there's nobody to call and say, I think we had one of the parks people brought up an example of, what if somebody wants to put in a gigantic dragon in Pepke Park or something like that? And you're going to get people who want to do crazy projects. And so it's sort of building in that process by which, and this would be your public, whoever gets that call, they say, oh, it's the public art person, and they will find out whether or not that's feasible. So it's about building in that process so that you can also say no to projects, as I said, or say yes to projects. So this was us trying to conceive of, I mean, I always give the example of Christo and all of his projects. You know, there are projects that will take longer, that you need to do multiple iterations of, you know, and you don't want to say no necessarily, but you need to work through all the details, or the very quick projects. So that's why it looks kind of unwieldy right now, but it enables you to do all those things, if I could just say that.
I'd rather you held it.
Do you want us to keep going?
Yeah, let's get through the presentation and then we'll
Okay.
come back around.
So governance is typically a section that you would have in a public art plan. And the governance section is kind of defining the entities that are involved and kind of their role. So we've kind of gone over city council would have a role. We are proposing that there be a city staff member hired for this. There's not currently one in the city of Aspen, and we would need those staff resources to be able to dedicate to even shepherding a program, a project through, or like you said, kind of coordinating even with an outside entity would need a staff member to be able to do that. Like I said, we're proposing to set up a public art advisory committee, which kind of acts like that recommending body, and council would be responsible for appointing those members. They have the ability to set up those temporary work groups. As I've spoken about, the community is a big part of this public art plan, and we want their role either to serve on these committees or we're going to wrap programming around this. Again, like I spoke of, you know, whether it's education or entertainment or outreach, again, how can we serve the community with these projects and really engage them with it? And then lastly, our partners and collaborators. Again, that's a key part of this public art plan, and again, something that really kind of stands us out as unique is that we are looking for those partners and collaborators to work with. Also, in a typical public art plan, you kind of have these standard practice policies that get defined. So a maintenance for the current pieces that you own, you would outline protocol on how to review a application for a donation of art. So if someone wants to donate, they would have to fill out an application that would then get reviewed by the Public Art Advisory Committee. and then deaccessioning work. So that's, again, setting up best practices for how you go about addressing removing a piece, relocating, or disposing of a piece of art. These policies have not been written out yet, but again, Kendall and Jill, these are pretty standard practice policies that get written in, and they'll bring their expertise to help us kind of flush those out a bit more. We are proposing taking a phased approach, and the reason is we want to build on the momentum. We got a lot of great feedback and momentum going from the public, from the community engagement. We heard the enthusiasm that people have for this, but we need to take the time to kind of build this program thoughtfully. So again, what you guys just saw, it's, we need to refine that. But we also don't want to miss out right now on starting to get a couple projects going. So we are proposing an establishing phase with council's approval of budget authority to create this new program, basically. If you gave the authority, we would be able to hire staff. Again, we don't currently have staff identified to run a program or develop a program or even shepherd projects through. So we would need some staff resources to help with that. From that, we're proposing setting up a public art task group. That's a group that would serve just this period, this 12 to 18 months, but they would act like the Public Art Advisory Committee. So they would kind of be able to proof of concept out the selection process we just showed while being able to implement one or two projects here out of the gate. Concurrently, we're refining the public art plan that we kind of discussed with you guys. This goes into a little bit more detail. We are proposing a new budget request of $335,000. That does include the cost for a new full-time employee. It also includes the program and administrative and operational costs to start initiating one or two projects here this year. We are recommending setting up this task group. Like I said, it's kind of this termed task group to kind of be a proof of concept. And allow them to start working on projects to continue that momentum. Again, while we're concurrently building out the plan, while we're refining the policies, the bylaws, the principles, and establishing the program kind of through branding and websites. So referring to the map is definitely something on our radar to start getting that working on as well. And the budget would allow for that. And that brings us to the end. So we can open it up for discussion.
I'm going to ask, Tim, what was your question?
I'm just curious from council's standpoint, I agree there's a ton of process here, like how do we simplify this? We've said it, as a member of the committee, for everyone who doesn't know me, and someone who's been working on this for a number of years, how do we get this timeline condensed so we can actually get public art in the community? My interest is having public art. You know, we were able to get the murals up, that was not an issue. We were able to get the city sidewalk painted. How do we streamline this so that we don't need maybe an employee, we don't need all these different voices. You empower, how do we get empowered, a group of people? How do we get empowered as the committee to be trusted for this and be taken forward?
Thank you. Will you go back one slide?
Oops.
So my question again to you would be, I would be interested to see examples of other communities, specifically other communities that don't have the ability to just ask for $300,000 for next year for an FTE from the Wheeler Rhett Fund. What does that look like? You know, I agree, this does seem tailored for Aspen, but what would you do in a community that didn't have that kind of accessibility for resources to do something like this?
It would most likely be an ordinance that requires, like I said, the 1%. And unfortunately, or some sort of developer requirement, there's all sorts of different ways to fund public art. But normally it requires an ordinance that the city sets aside a certain amount of budget. In Boulder, they set aside $300,000 a year for temporary projects, and it's based on 6 different sources of funding. So they also have a capital improvement project, 1%. So there's a lot of different ways that it can be funded. And we just, from the minute we started, we were told that the Wheeler the arts tax.
The Arts and
sorry.
Cultural Real Estate Transfer Fund.
Sorry.
Yep.
Arts and culture.
Was the likely.
Was the likely candidate, so.
And yes, most communities that do this do some kind of a 1% on capital projects.
Right.
And although some of them have voluntary programs where maybe they don't have, they're kind of built out, or they aren't a big city that have a lot of capital improvement projects with big budgets. So they might have a voluntary 1% where you're going in and redeveloping a park or doing something like that, and the council and the project team would decide, we want to set aside some money to do artwork at this location, but not an ordinance that requires 1%. What I will say is that for the programs that we've been benchmarking for you all of them have a staff person at least 3/4 time. Because the partnerships and the effort that it takes, it really does, we see the most successful programs have some kind of a dedicated person. Because Kendall always likes to say, who will pick up the phone when the question's asked, when that parks department says, we want to put together some money and do a project in this park, somebody needs to manage that. It's a project management position, really.
So again, you know, you use that example of like the Parks Department coming to us and saying, we want to put a piece of art here.
Sure.
But it was the Aspen Institute that came to us with the pavement project.
Right.
Shepherd Ferry and painting that building was done with just city approvals, I don't believe any city funds. Bloom was put on in the park from Aspen Santa Fe Ballet. The city didn't pay for it except for maybe some park fees that were waived or what have you. So again, what I've seen for public art is that it hasn't been city dollar directed. And that was kind of what we were trying to avoid, was the city being the arbiters of art and buying things and installing them. This hope, and you know, part of this, when this came to the council table and then came from the council table, I had an experience where somebody called me to say, hey, we have a beautiful sculpture, we would love to put it up, no cost to you, how do you do this? And that's when I said to our city manager, hey, we don't have a process for this, even this. So how is this something that gets done? But that's 4 examples just in the last 2 years of things that have been done in this community for 0 city dollars of investment. So again, I'm just I'm taken aback here. I just need to think about it a little bit. This is coming in a little bit over what I think the initial inspiration for this was, and so I'm thinking along the same ways of some of the comment we heard. How do we streamline this? How do we make this happen? How do we make it happen in 2024? I am all for convening a community advisory group. That's probably step 1. But it's really about coordinating these efforts, not germinating them, funding them, and executing them. I think is just not what really the role that I saw the city being in for this. So I'm having a moment for pause on the scope of what's being presented here. Bill, you had comments?
Thanks. Firstly, I love the idea of this and love the idea of more public art and both physical things and performance things. I just had a great feeling when that pavement art project happened, and the energy that surrounded it was great. So I'm super supportive of doing something here. And I think that this is an excellent use of that Wheeler-Rhett tax funding source. For many years, that money has been restricted to the use inside of the Wheeler, and it's been accruing to unreasonable levels, in my opinion. And I'm super appreciative that the past council tweaked that so that new funds could be used for something like this. I agree with a lot of what Tori said, particularly relating to the process being cumbersome, and I think it might also, it might be like a killer of something great in a way. So I'd be very interested in finding a way to streamline it, make it more efficient, instill more trust in specific groups, you know, whether that's a citizens committee, task force, something like that. I disagree with what Tori said in that I am interested in permanent pieces. I don't think that this is something that we're going to be discussing on a monthly or weekly or quarterly basis. But the permanent pieces that we have in Aspen are such a critical part of our fabric and so important in our community, and I'd love to see more both local and world-class art out in the public here. You know, the dancing fountains are great. You know, I don't know to what extent these things are public pieces, but the monkeys sitting on the bench are great. You know, the guy sitting in front of the J-Bar with the newspaper. These are iconic parts of Aspen that I want to see more of and new parts of and modernized. And I think that this is the way to do it. But I want to do it more efficiently. And I'm also curious, how else can it be done? Could those major efforts be outsourced to a consultant?
Yeah.
You know, do we need a staff person to do those major efforts? Is there a staff member that could spend some fraction of their time on the more local performance, temporary, whatever the right term is for these smaller efforts, and then when we want to undertake a more permanent piece, which may only come up once every year, couple years, I don't know, then we outsource that work. That's something I'd be interested in exploring, but I love this. I want our world-class city to have more world-class public art in all of its forms. Not saying that what we have is not world-class, but I want to continue going down that path and continue expanding upon it. We are so blessed to have a rich funding source, and let's put it to good use that everyone can enjoy. So I'm supportive of this, but concerned with the cumbersome nature of the process. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. John?
Yeah, I think all of us are experiencing a little sticker shock up here, but we are used to being new FTEs being proposed. And this is, as Bill said, this is an important program. I think there's a lot of flexibility built into this. I agree that I'd like to see us get the process down to where we could get projects approved in 5 or 6 months, like the Wheeler. Again, I know that was an easy one because they just came to us, but anyway, I support this, and thanks for all your hard work.
Sam?
Yeah, I'd want to say that the arts and culture is what makes Aspen unique and very different than other ski towns. So I'm very supportive of what you guys are trying to do. The fact that you call it robust is something that I enjoy hearing. It'd be different for me if it wasn't coming from the arts and culture rep fund, but that is underutilized and that's what it's for. So it's nice to see our tax dollars from this be put to good use. And then I have to echo a lot of Bill's comments as far as condensed timeline and asking for maybe permanent structures and things that can be established in this community for generations or years to come at least, that people can enjoy. The ones that were listed earlier are like wonderful staples in this community, and it's really nice in Aspen to go like hike Smuggler, go up and look at the views, and then come down into town and have this like ambiance of arts and culture, and the streets are just like filled with energy because of it. So supportive of that, but yeah, condensed timeline, less cumbersome, almost everything to Tim's point on that as far as cutting the bureaucratic red tape and making this stuff happen a lot quicker and more efficiently.
Ward?
Yeah, the FTE and, 335,000 is sticker shock. The 120 fund, I think, can support it. I also think that it should be, I don't want the city council to be super involved in this. I don't want to be an arbitrator of what is good art. And I think that art sometimes requires that there's art that people think is bad art. Because who's to define what is good and what is bad, and it kind of stretch our imaginations and our appreciation. I wonder if we could start off with a half an FTE to get the public art task group going and the plan going, but during that process, encourage people to come forward with, like the Aspen Ideas came forward with, show us what you have in mind. But I think that I always feel that this community really supports arts, and arts brings so much to this community. Not only just appreciation of the arts, but fueling tourism, and we get a lot of economic activity based on the arts. So the 335K gives me a little bit of heartburn, but the 120 fund has a lot in it. And the streamlining and keeping the city council out of it as much as possible is important to me.
Well, I don't know about monkeys on a bench or the guy out in front of the Jerome being iconic Aspen art pieces, but I hear some sentiment from council here. So I think you have a request for bringing something forward. You have some support for an FTE and $335,000, and you have others that are saying, hey, can there be a better streamlined process and something that really looks forward to 2024? But I don't hear a whole bunch of agreement on a lot. So why don't you go to the next slide and we'll see if we can answer a couple questions for you.
So, Mr. Mayor, just to add to that, is it okay to add to that?
Add to what?
Add to what you just summarized?
Maybe wait till we
Okay.
get to the end of the summary and then we'll figure it all out. Okay, council feedback, key findings, mission and guiding principles, project selection and development process. We heard a little bit that the key findings, mission and guiding principles are somewhat acceptable. I guess this is an opportunity for me. If you want to go back to the guiding principles slide, I would share my comments. I think that the language that's used here is a little high aspirational for me. I see this as a program that is growing beyond, I think, really what is community desired and an advancement for our community. I do not need the most dynamic, most innovative, and most unique projects possible. That is just artistic excellence. I mean, I'm talking about art in our community, connecting people. Like, I don't know. This is sounding like something else to me. It's not. These guiding principles are a little much for me. Some of them are great, but some of them I don't need the most of everything.
You know, they were meant to be aspirational, and I think aspirational is what inspires people and what gets people kind of behind it, and that's
If they're
kind of
guiding, and what this says is that we will not have anything but artistic excellence and the most dynamic, innovative, unique projects possible, I think that's just overreach. I just don't think we need to be like that, you know?
And I will say for the artistic excellence, I mean, the street mural hit artistic excellence in my mind. We had an incredibly talented local artist pull off a fantastic design. And so artistic excellence, but it can also encompass, you know, the big ambitious project. So I think artistic excellence, it shouldn't be something to be afraid of, you know. It's speaking to, and again, it is what we were hearing out in the community. But
Can I also add to what you just said? If I can, you know, we spoke with a lot of people, and I would say that the artistic excellence was a way of stating that we want to make sure that it's including local and national and international artists, but all of those are playing at an equal playing field. So artistic excellence is what we expect. So we heard that quite a bit out in the community. We also heard that, so those aspirational goals are very much about creating a plan that is evergreen and will last for a really, really long time that will, that it's not just about 2024, it's about the lasting legacy of the project. So we're thinking about legacy projects as well as smaller projects that are all waving in and out. So I think that that's what we heard when we were talking with the community quite a bit, if I could.
Any other comments on this slide? Yep, Sam?
I'll just say from my point of view, I do appreciate the aspirational guiding principles. I understand Tori's fears, but at the same time, I think you will get a lot of applications that are just striving to be the best, and their definition of the best might be different than others. But I think you'll still get them, and I think those will still be looked at in high regard. So I appreciate what you've done here.
Thanks.
Yeah, the things that really resonate with me are the inclusive engagement, dialogue, community building. Those are, I think, what Paradise Paradox was pointing to, the need for connections, the need for people to be able to have community and be connected in. And if art is a way to do that, I think that, and I do think that the monkeys and the guy at the Wheeler are iconic. I love them. Or not at the Wheeler, but at the Jerome, reading the newspaper. Those are whimsical. They're well done. I think that we should be having world-class art, whatever that is. Maybe I won't like it all the time, but that's all right. But for me, the stuff that's really important to me is community engagement, connection building, inclusive engagement, dialogue, some way to really be invitational for people to get involved.
Thanks. We can go back to the other slide and keep answering questions.
Okay.
Council members, are you supportive of a phased approach?
Yes. I'm happy to jump in. I'm fine with a phased approach. I'm fine with the guiding principles as you've written them. I think we already talked about process. And I'd like to hear a refined process before supporting a formal budget request.
Okay, because that part of that phased approach is kind of refining it, but you want a more, even before approving the budget, you want to see a more streamlined process outlined.
I'd like some follow-up about how we can improve upon the one thing I did hear a lot of consensus on today is that the process is not as streamlined as it could or maybe should be in our opinions. Correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. But
We think so.
that's what I heard. So I would say, a follow-up memo that shows some response to that feedback. And we could have a quick check-in on that is what I would need to be comfortable with a budget request subsequent to that.
And I would like more information as well about the FTE, as well as general administration. I'd like to see how those are broken out.
A breakdown of the budget. And then do you want to see, so you're asking for a breakdown of the budget, like how the FTE fits in that budget number?
Yeah.
And how, and then the allocation towards projects?
I have concerns about both a $150,000 full-time employee position. I have concerns about the budget impacts to the Wheeler Rhett Fund, which I'll continue to call it, even though it's been renamed. And I don't know what general administration for $187,000 even really means.
So that's to start initiating projects. So that budget allocation, so the 335 includes the FTE and money to start funding and realizing projects.
Yeah, then again, and to council members, I just got to let you know that that was not the anticipated direction for this. We were hoping to have a little bit more community involvement, a little bit more grassroots, and not a city-directed program. So that's all I can share with you. This is a different council than the one that got this underway, so I can only share my input, which is that this was not really necessarily what we were going out for, but $187,000. Again, the examples that I've put out, including the Monkeys on the Bench, which I believe is actually a privately owned piece by the gallery that it sits in front of in order to drive business to the gallery. And I think that the guy sitting on the bench at the Jerome is owned by the Hotel Jerome. So they're not public art, except for that they're visioned in the public, which is more along the avenue of what we're talking about. We want to enable those people that are in our community that want to do this as well to do it. We want to be partners. I didn't anticipate $190,000 for this next year to do artwork that we just have been getting and that people have been coming to us trying to bring to our community, but we didn't have an avenue for them to. So again, I heard support from other members. I am not supportive of this at this time, but if it's going to come to a formal budget request, you have some more information that's being requested by council members, and my request would be to have a breakdown of, I want more information about the FT and budget implications, as well as a breakdown more of this general administration.
I'll speak for them, Tori, but I think that this effort could accomplish both. You know, I think we could continue to build a world-class sort of public art permanent installation program like the fountains. I mean, that's never going to happen without some city-side coordination, right, on public property.
Absolutely.
You know, what is the next iteration of the fountains for the future of this community? So I'm thinking of that as sort of one side of this, and the other side of this is, let's say a private gallery does want to put something out on a corner, which I'm sure that was never approved to put those monkeys out there, but it's become an important part of Aspen. So like a formalized process for doing that and continuing to encourage things like that to happen.
Absolutely. There's going to need to be something set up for this. Absolutely. There is definitely. And again, between the FTE and the general administration, I lean more towards the FTE because we need people in order to implement program. I get that, and what we're hearing from the director of our Red Brick is that they don't have the capacity over there right now. So that part I get, but you know, I didn't anticipate these dollars coming back at us in this. I didn't anticipate this type of program request from how this started. But with more information, I'm happy to continue to move this forward. Again, you know, we're a team. Mine's just one input out of 5. So I'm just sharing my concerns and my input. John?
Yeah, I do want to agree with you, Tori. This is a little bit different than what I think our previous council was thinking of. With that said, we are a very lucky community to have the means to finance something like this. And again, I have concerns about the FTE and certain amount of sticker shock, but I believe we have the ability to move this forward. Thanks.
I just want to jump in. If you wanted to scale it to a part-time position, that's doable. I mean, that's your decision on the budget authority to get to it. What you'll get with that kind of half-time position is it just takes longer, you know, for things to happen. So I think it's up to your appetite on what you want to see. And I also want to make the point with the Aspen Ideas Festival partnership, yes, they were the majority funder. Our city staff spent a ton of time getting that project through kind of a process and implemented. And moving forward, there isn't that staff capacity to do. We did that because it was a pilot project. It was serving kind of the purpose of saying, let's pilot something, let's test it out. Is the community into this? And I think they kind of showed that they were. But moving forward, we wouldn't have the capacity at this current staffing level to support, even that if the Aspen Ideas Festival came back to us, we wouldn't have that ability to do that again.
I think that's part of my point, Sarah, is like, why does it take so much staff time to do that? You know, like I get that one's sort of unique because it's in the public right away and you got to deal with engineering to a certain extent. You know, there's too much bureaucracy there, in my opinion. But like I assume it also took a lot of staff time to put the stainless steel airplane in front of your building, which like it shouldn't have.
Right.
It's like, that was great. It was a temporary thing. If people hate it, it's going to be gone in a couple months. Like, that's great. So how do we make this more streamlined? How do we put a panel of our citizens who know something about art together, who can agree on this, a majority can agree on it, and get it done? That's my interest. I don't want this to be a strung-out process where it has to keep coming back to us. I mean, I don't know a lot about art. I shouldn't be the one making the final decision on this.
So the recommendation in terms of the FTE was based upon my and Jill's experience dealing with public art projects in our various municipalities. It can take, permanent pieces can take longer than these temporary projects for sure. And it's just the iterations of going through public works, or, finding out if there's going to be plowing on top of things, or parks, and finding out, doing some process around with the neighborhood. It's project management is what it is. It's also someone who can be and have their tentacles out in the community. So it's somebody who's out there meeting with the Aspen Ideas Festival or the Aspen Art Museum, or all these different partners, and making sure that they know what's going on and have a pulse on the community to be able to bring the projects in. And it's also just pure project management. So there's a lot. I mean, even if you decide to deaccession a piece of art, that is going to be process. There will be process involved. There will be public input. There will be all sorts of things possibly. So those are all things that go on behind the scenes that just need to happen. And I'm sure that even the mural, the Shepherd Ferry mural, I know there was a lot of back and forth with Historic Preservation Committee and that kind of thing. So there's just a lot of staff time that goes into those types of projects, just from my experience.
Go ahead.
I think we're kind of sending contradictory messages from here, that we want to streamline the process, but we want to slow down the phasing. So I guess I'm looking for an accelerated phased approach, if that's. I want to see those 120 fund dollars put to good use, and I support public display, privately owned display of art, publicly owned display of art. I am open to purchasing permanent displays for temporary performance arts, all of those. I appreciate all of that. So it's kind of like we were saying, throw up the spinnaker and at the stern throw out a sea anchor. So I want to accelerate the process where art gets from conception to implementation. I want to try to minimize the amount of city council involvement in this. But I want to be protective of, sensitive to what kind of art is being displayed. So I guess I initially opposed to the budget request, but to bring it forward, and I think in response to Tori and John's questions about what we had envisioned, what I had envisioned was more public art. I didn't have envisioned this whole process, how we get to it. And if we can streamline that process, but I think that all of us want to see more public art. I haven't heard anybody say, no, we don't want public art. So it's, nobody likes change and nobody likes to spend money, but we've got the money, so let's spend it.
I'm wondering about creating the advisory commission, and if that is something that we should be doing sooner than later. Again, 2024, around the corner. I think that, it's possible to envision what 2024 looks like as a successful year. And maybe that's what we need, is we could use the advisory commission to actually get this going. That would be a question I have. Again, your question here is to bring, yes, you can bring forward a budget request, but there is additional information and there are alternatives that council members are interested in seeing as informational. And part of that is my request. I want to know what other communities do that don't have $335,000 to throw at it. So I know there's a way to get to where we're going, and I think we've taken the first step of a 1,000-mile journey. Sam?
Yeah, last comment. I just want to say, if you go cheap, you get cheap, but please stand by the money that you are asking to spend as far as what we can expect in the future, because I do think $335,000 can feel like nothing if we actually get a product that I think you envision. And then off base, but I would ask that you please confer with Tim Sack, who's sitting behind you, because I think he does have a lot of great ideas about how this could be successful.
He's been an important member of our visioning committee, so he's been very
I
involved
figured,
with this.
but just want to make sure, so.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, I have one other item, but Diane, did you want to summarize?
I did. I just wanted to make sure that we come back. So the plan would be to come back in the spring supplemental with the funding request and the specificity that council requires. What we'll do is that attachment C has that phased approach, right? I think where we all may have, we wanted to show you the big picture for the long term, because if you don't know what the long term looks like, then sometimes you miss it on the short term. But that phased approach is very much the plan. It's streamlined, it's efficient, it's a smaller, it's a test, it's a disappearing task force. We'll come back with some more description of how that is much more streamlined and how we envision that being quick. As soon as you stand up that committee, this is a community where folks will come forward and say, I want to do this, I want to do this, right? Very much so. So what we'll do is we'll come back with a little bit more of that description of what that FTE does. But remember, that's a loaded cost. That's not their salary. That's a loaded, includes a lot of overhead. What the streamlined process looks like, and we'll do that for the spring supplemental so that there's a chance you can stand up, that committee could be stood up in the summer. Does that seem right?
It is, and that, I did want to make that point. If it goes to the spring supplemental process, that doesn't get approved till the end of April, so then that's when funding comes forward, and then we have to hire an FTE and set up that, prop up that kind of temporary, what we were calling the public art task group to get things going. So just realize that brings us into, five-ish, six-ish months into the year. We'll hit the ground running, trying to get some projects going, but I just want to build out that expectation with that timeline.
I would be open to some information ahead of the spring supplemental about how the process could be improved and streamlined.
Okay.
And that way, maybe the spring supplemental process is, you have more surety around it, or it could be more expedited.
Prime the pump.
I can probably do that in an info-only memo.
Yeah, and then we could do a check-in at a regular meeting.
Okay.
A very brief discussion, I'd imagine.
Got it? Cool. Then I wanted to bring up one other item that's related to this that I was told to hold on to until tonight, and that is the idea of the construction site beautification. It is not part of this public art program, but it is something that we saw get its legs going last year. For any of you that haven't seen it, along Cooper Avenue, the Bidwell Building and the Red Onion and that whole 3/4 of a block, if you will, has a little enhanced construction screening. Over at the old Grill in the Park, but that's going back 3 or 4 iterations of the place. On Mill Street by Wagner Park, there's some construction fencing that has photos on them. Member from Guadalupe Leyes, the gallery across, she did some beautification over there. And I think that we need to make this part of our code, so that without much cost or onus, it can be done on a regular basis. And so I would need members of council to either say that they support having some work done on this, to bring us back some opportunities and options so that that kind of program goes forward with construction site
Tori,
advancement and beautification.
I thought that we did have council support for that, and the first beautification project I remember was the W Hotel, and that staff felt that they were invitational to the designs, and we said, go ahead, you decide what is appropriate there, but we decided we didn't want it to be a billboard for everybody that was involved in the process, but whatever we need, I think the beautification.
My understanding is that it does not sit in our land use code right now, and that it's not a big deal, but we just need council members to say that, yes, we do enjoy that, and we'd love to hear some opportunities for that.
I want lipstick on the pig, yeah.
Okay.
I generally enjoy it and appreciate it. I have a lot of concerns about the codification of it. I think it should only be in the core. I think that there's a lot of places where a lot of effort could go into it and it wouldn't be necessary or
Yeah.
appreciated. I also am concerned with how bureaucratic it could get and who's the one to determine whether it's quote unquote beautiful or not. I don't know. I mean, it shouldn't be advertising. We shouldn't put up billboards for other stores in town. I think I imagine most of us could agree on that. But I'm really concerned about you got to do a proposed design and so, who gets to decide whether it's appropriate or not? I'm really concerned there, so.
There's already existing language around sign code stuff, and there's even some existing language around window wraps and the like. So I totally agree. I'm not looking at making anything additional, and my understanding of the success that we had on Cooper Avenue as well as on Mill Street was that those were very low impact, easily handled with the owners of the property and stuff. So I agree with you. I'm not looking at making anything onerous at all. It was also the fact that was so easily done that it can be done with a lot of our existing regulations. Just as of right now, there is no compulsion to say that, hey, some treatment is better than no treatment. So,
I'd be supportive of it with a very delicate hand on the language in the code.
okay, but you're interested in seeing those options brought back to you?
Yeah, I do think it
Great.
adds a lot and helps distract people from the fact that there's, a lot of construction activity at certain times, so.
Okay.
But again, very delicate, don't want to set up more bureaucratic process, want to sort of encourage and maybe even require some decoration of construction fencing while construction fencing is up, but the language probably ends there.
Yeah, yes, it's got broad guidelines except with the exclusions of, like you said, advertising or this kind of stuff. Support?
Yes.
Okay.
Support?
Yes, support. I also wanted to mention another nice example of construction fencing is on Bleecker Street, over on the way to the red brick. It's surrounded by aspen trees.
Yeah.
Nicely done. I support it.
Great.
But I agree with the points Bill brought up as well.
Great.
From a workload perspective, ComDev's a little busy right now, so it may be, we'll come back to you and let you know the time frame for that.
Yeah.
Just to set expectations.
Yeah, put it on the list.
We shall, thank you.
Put it on the pile. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
For making the drive back up. Appreciate you. Ann, good to see you. Tim, thank you for being here and following up some more.
Thanks, Austin.
Thanks to GrassRoots. GrassRoots viewers, we are back tomorrow. We have got a regular scheduled meeting at 5 o'clock tomorrow. That means if you have any citizen comments, please join us here at City Hall at 5 o'clock. Thank you.